two, three. Listen.
Fresh, doing something you haven't heard before.
What's up, guys, and welcome to Inland Hills students. We're so stoked that you're here again. But hey, we have a couple announcements before we jump into our message today. The first one is, if you're not following us on Instagram, you gotta figure your life out because you should be following us. We post stuff daily. It's interactive, it's engaging, and we'd love for you guys to be a part of that. The other thing, the biggest thing, is that this weekend, we have our 30-year anniversary here at IHC, and let me tell you guys, it's going to be literally insane. There is going to be a giant slide. There's going to be a rock climbing wall. There's going to be those swings that you like fly around on that you go to Disneyland and you're on it and you're like, oh, this is a little bit sketchy. But this one's not sketchy. It's going to be so much fun. Honestly, it's going to be a carnival, and I haven't even told you guys the best part. The part that I'm most excited about, there's going to be food. But not like any food. It's not just like your Uncle Tito's hamburgers and hot dogs. No. It is going to be by a gourmet Food Network claimed chef, and it's totally free. So honestly, you guys, come this weekend because it's going to be probably one of the most incredible weekends of our year, and you really don't want to miss it. So we're going to jump into our discussion for today on the books that we recently read. But before with that, I'd love to pray with you guys. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us here, keeping us safe, and just be working within this ministry, within the lives of the students, whether on campus, online, no matter where they are. I pray that you are just reaching out to them, that you are working in and through them and around them, and that they feel your presence by each day passing. It's in your heavenly name we pray. Amen. Now I got a question for you guys. Have you ever had a friend that's done something, or maybe you made a new friend, and you feel like you don't really know that person, or they did something that messed with you that went a little bit too far? Well, friends, today I have a story about that. See, when I was in high school, it was about probably my senior year, and homecoming was coming up. And so my friends and I would always carpool to school together. My friends would drive, he'd pick us all up because we all lived in the same neighborhood. Life was good, life was fun, and there was a big dance around the corner. But we asked our friend, who was a little bit younger than us, we were like, hey, have you asked any girl to homecoming yet? He's like, no, I haven't yet, but I probably should get on it. And so the week went by, we all went to school, and then it was the weekend. And we were hanging out at my friend's house one night, and that friend who hadn't invited a girl to homecoming yet wasn't with us. And we thought to ourselves, guys, we have to mess with him. And so we thought, okay, what could we do? We could sneak into his backyard and bang on his bedroom window and just scare the living daylights out of him. They're like, that's good, but we've done that. We could launch water balloons from our front yard to hit his house down the street. It's good, but we've done that. What's something we've never done? And then it dawned on me. It was like a golden ray of sunshine idea in my mind. It was like, we're going to fake ask him to homecoming. And so we went to Michael's. We got this giant sheet of paper. We got glue. We got pens. We got glitter. We got it all. And we made a giant homecoming sign. And we put it on his garage. So we taped it to the roof so it was hanging down. And that way when he came out the next morning, it said, will you go to homecoming with me? But we didn't say it was from anybody. And so the weekend rolls by, we pick him up Monday morning, and we're like, hey, dude, how was your weekend? Did you do anything crazy? And he's like, guys, somebody asked me to homecoming. And I'm trying not to die laughing. I'm like, wow, do you have any idea who it is? He's like, I got a couple of suspicions. Granted, they were all wrong. And so he goes throughout his week asking multiple girls if they asked him to homecoming because there was a banner on his garage door. And so every day he'd talk about how he would ask people if they asked him to homecoming, and they were all saying no. Now, that's pretty messed up, and I think that we went maybe a little bit too far. But after homecoming passed, we decided to tell him, we're like, hey, we were the ones that put the thing on your garage. And he's like in a really somber voice, he's like, yeah, I thought so. And I felt a little bit bad. But all of that to say is that he was truly buying into something and buying into this idea of somebody without actually knowing who that person is. And I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times in our lives, we might ask ourselves, who is this person? And in relation to our faith, we might ask, who is Jesus? Like, who is he really? Was he just some dude? Is he some made-up fictional person? Or is he living, breathing life? And that's something that we're talking about today. See, today we are jumping into the book of John, which honestly really deals with the identity of who Jesus is. See, in our lives, it's really easy to question authority. And when you grow up, whether it's in the church or growing up with people who might be religious, it's really easy to feel like you don't understand the faith because you don't understand the person the faith revolves around, which is Christ, which is Jesus. The other thing is that we're not really sure how much we can really know about Jesus if we're just starting out, right? But the reality is that Jesus isn't just attested to in our Bible, but is also attested to in ancient writings around the same period, from Pliny the Younger, Tacitus, Josephus, who are all important historians. And so what we find out is that Jesus is a very real individual who we may today have a real individual relationship with. Now, the cool thing about John is that the Gospel of John draws on elements of the Old Testament, which is kind of the first half of our book, and more specifically, really draws on the first 5 books in our Bible, which is called the Torah, which is also held by Jews all over the world and plays a role in every Abrahamic faith, which is just ones that descend from Abraham. And in Genesis 1, the very first verse in our Bible, it says, "Then in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." And in that whole first chapter of our Bible, it's God saying something, and then it is. God said, "Let there be light," and there was. God said, "Let there be this," and there was. And so through God's words, we see actions and creation coming about through God's own declaration. And so how is this relevant to John? Well, in John 1, in the very beginning of the gospel, it says this: "In the beginning," sound familiar, "was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And so it's drawing on this experience and this creation narrative that's happening within Genesis 1. In the beginning was God, was the Word. And we see this parallelism between Jesus and the God who is creating in Genesis. It then says this: "Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." And so just like in Genesis, where it's God declares, then it is. God says, then it was. God speaks, and it exists. It then says, "In him was life, and that life was the light of all humankind." The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John then pivots his gospel. Hey, this is who Jesus is. This is who this man from Nazareth is. This is who this ordinary, everyday individual is to us then, and to us now, and to us forever. Now, there's going to be a lot of things in our life that are fighting for value for our attention, and that we might look to and think that it is the light, right? So maybe I look to things that I want and I say, man, that is light. Maybe it's to another individual, friends, relationships, whatever it might be. Say, man, that is the light of my life. But what we end up finding out is it's just a lot of dead stars. And we spend a lot of time wishing on dead stars. They're called falling stars. They're dead stars. But what we really need to be looking to is a very live, a very active, a very eternal sun. And that is not only just the Son, S-U-N, but in this sense, the Son, S-O-N. And so John continues in his evaluation of who Jesus is. And now in the Torah, in those first 5 books, we also get something very important that you might have heard from, and that is God's name. And his name, he gives unto the people, it's Yahweh. But before even that, when he's speaking to a guy named Moses, he gives an in-depth look at his nature, at his character, and at his presence. See, the huge thing within the Torah is this thing called the Exodus, which is when God moves his people from slavery in Egypt to give them their own land, to prosper, to be blessed, and then to be a blessing to others. And so as God is transitioning these people out of bondage and out of slavery, he's going to send this man named Moses. And Moses asks, when I go to these people, when I say that God is coming to them, how am I going to say it? Why are they going to believe me? How are they going to know who you are? How are they going to believe me and believe that you are the one who sent me? And so in Exodus, verse 3:14, it says this: God said to Moses, Ayah Asher Ayah, I am who I am. See, in our friendships and in our daily lives, we're going to meet people and we don't totally know who they are all the time. Our friends, our family, we see it on TV every day. People do things that seem out of character. But the reality is that it's truly hard to know somebody's character, especially when there is variables in their life that are always changing. But with God, we have this eternal individual who is making himself known to us in ways we've never even comprehended before. And one of those ways is Jesus, the one who is there at the beginning, the one who we can look to as being creator, as well as that who walks with us. We never have to fret. We never have to worry, because not only is God around us, above us, whatever it might be, but God is with us. And it is the same God who walked with us, experienced life, and experienced pain with us. And so in Exodus, as God says, Ayah Asher Ayah, I am who I am, or I will be who I will be, or continue to be, continuing in his character, John uses the same I am in his gospel. See, it's mentioned 7 times in the Gospel of John. It says, I am the bread of life. We don't need to hunger. We don't need to look for anything outside of who Jesus is. I am the light of the world. Stop paying attention to dead stars in your life. I am the gate which the sheep enter through. If we want to experience life, we're going to experience that through Jesus. I am the good shepherd, the one who's never going to leave us, the one who's always going to lead us to the still waters and green pastures. I am the resurrection and the life. We never have to look for life outside of anything other than Jesus, because it's ultimately going to be unfulfilling to us. And I am the way, the truth, and the life. Let's be honest. It's easy to think that being a Christian, being a Christ follower, is easy, right? A lot of times it's looked at like the goody two-shoes, the people who are just following the rules. But if we're honest with ourselves, it's difficult. And as Jesus calls himself the way, the truth, and life, that way oftentimes leads us from what is easiest to do. It goes against the current. It goes against culture, no matter what that culture looks like, whether it is this nation or whether it is one of the other 192 nations within the world. It's always counterculture in some type of way, which is to say that oftentimes Christianity is not the easy way out. And being a Christ follower and knowing who Christ is not always easy. But as we begin to have more knowledge of who Jesus is, as we begin to grow into that mystery of the Creator, we begin to understand a little bit more about the world. We understand a little bit more how to love each other, and we understand a little bit more of the value that each one of us intrinsically has, not because of what we've done or what we can do, but because of who you are and who you were created to be. So what do we do with this information? Okay, Greg, so you're telling me Jesus is the great I am. Jesus is the one who came that saved us in the same way that God moves the Israelites out of bondage in Egypt. This is the same God, Jesus, moving us out of bondage of our own desires and flesh to come into relationship with him. So what do I do with that, Greg? How does that apply to me right here, right now? What do I do to move forward? And the answer is to invest in that relationship with the great I am. See, an investment is a little bit different than an expense. When I buy new shoes, oftentimes that's an expense. When I buy tons of food at a food court of whatever it is, oftentimes that's an expense. But an investment is something that you understand you're putting something into because the return is going to be greater. When we invest in our relationship with God, when we invest in our relationship with Jesus, when we invest in our relationship with each other, we're going to get something in return. And that return on our investment might not happen tomorrow, but I can guarantee you, as time goes on, as minutes count, as hours continue to grow, you're going to see that investment blossom into something you never could have imagined. Since the beginning, God desired a relationship with every single one of us. And though we may not see God face to face like we wish we would, we can still know him, and that is exactly the aim of the Gospel of John. To know and be known. To understand and be understood. And friends, I invite you that is something that is open to you right now, because the gate never closes, and the gate is always Jesus. The life is always found in him, and that we don't have to look to anything else, because oftentimes other things can be a waste of time. And so as we go into our small groups, let's discuss, who is this man? Who is this Savior? And what does a relationship look like in this faith? Let's head into small groups. I hope that those discussions were really beneficial for you guys, and that you found out some new things, not only about those who are around you that you may have community with right here, right now, tonight, but also about God, who we can have community with every second of the day. So this past week, we read some letters by our friend Peter, and some of that actually had to deal with what a false teacher looks like. And we're kind of carrying on that theme going into the next week's readings of 1st, 2nd, 3rd John. And a lot of it deals with false teachers. And let's be honest, this is something that was prevalent back then and something that can be prevalent today. And it's something that we can lean into, and when we discuss what that means or what that kind of looks like, oftentimes it's talking about people who act like they know it all, who believe that they know it all, but what they speak is trash. I mean, how many of you guys have met somebody that is so confident in what they know, but a lot of times can be very manipulative or coercive in that? The same thing is happening in the early church, right? There's people who are trying to twist the words of Jesus to create their own followers and to create their own, hierarchy, their own leadership. And oftentimes, people might get abused or used in those environments. Now, we might be thinking, that sounded like my idea of like some churches before I became a Christian. It's something that's very prevalent today, but something that when we truly understand the Bible, when we understand the words that it's saying, the context that it's using, that we may go out and discern what is and isn't truth. Because just like there are things that are fighting for our attention, there are going to be people that are fighting for our attention. But I promise you guys, as long as we stay true on the path, that the person that we are following is Jesus and not any individual, we don't have to worry about any false teaching or fake news or whatever it looks like, because we're following the way, the truth, and the life. Now, these letters can tell us a lot about the early church, and we can even reflect on what's happening today. But we want to lean into what's going on. We want to try to understand what's happening, and we want to do it with a mindset of going to know who God is, going to know what this life looks like for us. And I promise you guys, the more we lean into it, the more fruitful it'll be. I hope you guys have an amazing week, and we can't wait to see you guys next time. We'll catch you later.